So today we're going to look at this flaming text effect and how to create it. Now I know that David Cohen of Learn Now Effects did a flaming text effect recently in one of his videos, and to be fair, it's better than mine. However, I think mine is less complicated. So I'll link David's video in the description. Go take a look and then you can decide which best suits your need. Okay, so from the edit tab we're going to drag a new fusion composition onto the timeline. We'll move the playhead over the composition, we'll right click on it and we will select change clip duration, and in this instance I changed it to 10 seconds. And we will hop over into Fusion. Cool. So the basis of this effect basically is the fire, so I'm going to work on the fire first. So that's a particle system. So we need a particle emitter and a particle renderer, which are joined together and piped into your media out. If you look in the center of the screen, you can see the particles, which is lovely but not what we want. So we're going to select the particle emitter, come to the region tab, and we're going to change the region for now to a line. It won't stay as a line, this is just so that we can get the effect that we're after. So again, still in our particle emitter, we're going to go to the control tab and we're going to give our particles some velocity. Now at the minute, as you can see, the particles are going off to the right. We need them to go straight up. So to do that, we're going to come down to the angle and change it to 90 degrees. And now, as you can see, our particles are going in the direction we want. At the minute, they're probably going a little bit too far. So we will start to tweak some settings. First thing I'm going to change is I'm going to up the number of particles to 2500. And that looks nothing like fire, but we'll work on it. So the first thing we're going to do is add some movement to the particles. To do that, we will press Shift spacebar, call up our select tool and look for P Turbulence. This node drops into our graph and straight away you can see the effect it's having. Now it's a case of adjusting the turbulence strengths until you find the look that you want for your flames. So we notice that we're getting banding at the bottom of our particles here. That's because at the minute there's no variance on the velocity. If you add variance to the velocity, it will get rid of that. It's quite useful, any sort of setting that you have, if you add some sort of variance into it, it makes things look a bit more natural. When doing anything with particles, any adjustment you make takes a couple of seconds to register because the particle emitter needs to, the particle renderer, needs to re-render the particles based on the new settings. So we're starting to get something like fire, but we're getting lots of particles dropping below the line, which we don't really want. So if you take your Y strength down to 0, it will stop that. also added some variance to the number of particles and slightly brought the velocity down so that the particles don't go as high up the screen. And now we're starting to get something that looks a bit like fire. So a few final tweaks on the Turbulence node, and wait for it to render out so we can have a look at it. We've got something that looks like the start of what could be fire. Next, I'm going to bring in a blur node off the hotbar at the top here. With the emitter select, the renderer selected, it automatically drops a blur node into the stream. Up the blur value again to the desired look you're after, and you start to see the fire. Once you've got your blur as you want it, we'll go back into the P emitter node, open the style tab, color controls and color over life controls. You'll see this white bar here. This represents the color of the particle over its life. The left hand edge is its birth and the right hand edge its death. If you click in the bar, you can set marker points which you can assign colors to. As you see, you just click on the little arrow to activate it and then change its color. I've selected a range of colours from bright yellow or white yellow to red to represent sort of fire colours. What I also did once I'd sort of reached the final red or red-orange colour, I added another marker in and made this black, which against a black background you won't see, but if overlaid on something else you will see a sort of smoky trailing off of the fire. Just to lift things a little bit, what I'm going to do now is shift spacebar, select the blur node, shift spacebar and type glow and bring in a glow node, and again you can tweak this to your desired sort of look. And there we pretty much have our fire. Okay, so we have the fire something like we want it, so what we need to do now is attach it to our text. So drag a text node into the screen and type in whatever text you want. Drag it into the viewer so we can see it. Select your font, size, etc. And this will be the basis of our burning text. So at the minute we can't get our text into our P emitter, so we need to go up to the region tab of the P emitter and change the region to bitmap. This adds this little input that we can now drag our text into. And if we put the media out into the viewer, give it a second, and we have burning text. Now at the minute this isn't massively clear, so what we need to do is if we take the output from the glow node and merge it back onto the text, this will put our actual text behind the fire. And if we then go from the merge to the immediate out, you can see that our text becomes a bit clearer. I don't like this sort of two-line text, so I just changed it here. I think it looked a bit better as one line. And also you don't get the flame from the bottom letters messing up the top letters. The next thing I want to do is to add heat haze to the text. We're going to do that by using a displace node. So again, shift and spacebar, type displace, and add the displace node. Now we're going to pipe the output from the text into the yellow arrow of the displace node and bring the displace node back to the merge where the text originally was. On its own, the displace node won't do anything, it needs something to drive it, and for that we're going to use a fast noise which we pipe into the green arrow. Select the displace node and put it into the viewer. Now if we come over, we can change the type to X, Y, and you can see the X and Y refraction sliders that we will use to change how much the effect happens by. To get some movement, we're going to go into our fast noise and change it basically. Again, you'll need to play with the settings, get the settings that you want. And add some seethe to it so that it's actually animated. Now if we come back into our displace node and change the X and Y refraction, you'll start to see your text moving and changing ever so slightly, just to give this sort of effect of a bit of heat haze. Good. Now if we view everything back together, you've got your fire happening and you've got your text slightly shimmering behind it. Okay, what else can we do to this? Well, I guess what I did next was I animated the colour of the text so that it started off quite dark, and then as it got hotter it got brighter. So select your text, come into the style tab and keyframe colour. At keyframe 0 or at frame 0, and set the text to quite dark red, and then over the first half of the clip I gradually increase the brightness so that it became first a hot red, and then as time goes on it becomes a very hot sort of yellow colour. I guess simulating, I don't know, metal or something heating up. So I've just disabled the particle system here for a second using Command and P so that you can see the text itself. Once we've got the text how we want it, Command or Control P to bring your particles back online, and we can have a look at what we've got. The next thing I did was I animated the flames. So to do that, it's about keyframing and setting the number of particles produced. So at frame 0 I set the number of particles to 0, then I keyframed at frame 48, again at 0, and then at 96 I brought the number back up to 2500. What this does is it gives the impression that as the text is getting hotter, i.e. the colour change, then the fire kicks in. So this is the effect of the text getting hot and then bursting into flames. And that's, if you want to stop there, is basically the tutorial. What I chose to do was sort of expand it a little bit more by bringing in a second particle system that I used to sort of represent sparks coming off the text. So we will bring in a particle emitter and a particle renderer. We now need to connect these into our flow, so connect the emitter to the renderer and merge the renderer onto the last merge node, and that will create its own merge. Select particle emitter 2, and if we view that in the viewer, you can see the sort of circle of particles. What we want is the text to drive our system again. So come to region, bitmap. Again, we get the little extra input on the P emitter and connect our text to it. What I did there was, if you hover your mouse over the pipe and press the Alt or Option button, you get a little square that just lets you route your pipes a bit tidier. As you play, you can see particles are starting to appear where the text is. So now in the particle emitter, we're going to come into the style tab and we're going to change the style to Ngon. And I picked the fourth one along here, the sort of blurry pentagon thing. Drop the number of sides down to 4 and keep the starriness at 0.75 and increase the size. Now you can see our particles where our text are. If you zoom in, they're actually little tiny stars. What I'm going to do is change the size over life with this graph, so that at the start they're quite big, and then as they head towards the death they shrink down. If you keep an eye on one particle, you'll see it gradually fading away. So we'll come to the emitter controls, and velocity, we're going to give a little bit of velocity to. Again, you need to be sort of quite gentle with the velocity, because too much and it shoots all over the shop, which isn't what we want. We want the angle to 90, and we're going to add a bit of angle variance so that the particles sort of spread out a bit rather than just going straight up. So there we have the start of our sparks. At the minute there's way too many of them, so I'm going to drop the number right down. Now what I want the sparks to do is go up and then drop down. To achieve that, shift spacebar and look for P directional force. And as you can see now, the particles are sort of go up slightly and then drop down. The directional force is basically acting like gravity, if you want. Come into the strength slider of your P directional force and adjust it so that you get some rise on the particles before they start to fall. Again, you need to sort of play with this until you get the desired effect. In the Style tab of your P emitter, we're going to go to Colour, Colour over Life, and we're going to basically repeat the process that we did with the fire. So click inside the white line to set your markers, and then select each marker in turn and assign it a colour. And use pretty much the same sort of colour range as the fire. So yellow through to red, and again ending with black. Now if you look, you can just see the sort of colour variation. Again, you might need to tweak the positions to get the desired sort of effect. What I also did in this instance was set some colour variance, because if you look initially, the banding's quite obvious. So by setting variance, it breaks that banding up a bit. I basically went down the list and set everything to either minus or plus 0.5. So minus on the left and plus on the right. And I did that for all the colours. So once we've got our variances set, I shift spacebarred and found our friend glow again and added a glow onto the sparks. Again, you can adjust your glow to get the desired effect, but don't go too mad. So there's your sparks with a bit of a glow to them. And if we bring our media out into the viewer, you can see the sparks and the fire all together. So still in our sparks P emitter, I did a little bit of tweaking of various controls, so I've increased the size. And I went into the controls and tried messing about with sort of spins and things on the stars, so again they're not all sort of robotic and the same, to try and add a bit of variation to them. Now again, much like the fire, the sparks are coming in too soon, so we're going to need to animate them. So we're going to come to frame 96 before they start, I think, yeah, frame 96, into your sparks emitter, keyframe, the number, I've gone back 12 frames, so half a second in this case, and drop the number to 0. So again, your text warms up, there's no sparks or fire. Your fire starts to kick in, and then you start to get sparks. So now we'll pop back to the edit page and let our clip cache, and then we'll have a look at it. So this is your clip at normal speed. Now if you noticed, it caught the clip prior to this one, which was a version that I was working on building up to the tutorial. I actually prefer the particles in the other clip. So I did some messing about with the particles in the tutorial and couldn't get it right at all. So I basically copy and pasted the settings over. So you may at this point want to sort of pause the video and look what settings I've used. Basically, I think I took the particles down, made them a bit smaller, the spark particles that is. Added a bit of fade, changed the sort of size over life, but just sort of flick backwards and forwards through this last few seconds of the video, and you can examine the settings that I had at the time. I say they're still not brilliant compared to the first ones, but I think they're a little bit better. So that's basically the tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot, bye.